Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Mike, I think most of the people know you more or less, but if in a nutshell you would meet somebody and you would ask, what are you doing?
I'm a media entrepreneur, meaning that we do media, we publish, we influence opinion, and we report on the news.
That's great, that's a good tagline. But how did it evolve? I mean, you are now one, if not the biggest independent media house company here in Luxembourg.
Mm-hmm.
How did it evolve? From the early days, I still remember there was something in a photocopier shop where you were doing these and then you were giving out leaflets. That was
well,
the early days.
that's like a question. Do you want it in like 30 seconds or 2 hours? Or
Take your time.
I think
Take
I do
your time.
A 2-minute version probably. Well, yeah, it started. I did photocopies in '85.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. I did photocopies in '85 because it was a great technology by then. And a few years later, I quit school because I had clients. I was 18 then, and I had clients. I had people working for me. I mean, not under contract, but like freelancing, and it was just too busy to do everything,
mm-hmm.
especially on those regular schedules of the school.
Mm-hmm.
From then on, it took me another half dozen of years doing different publishing experiences, a lot of events, fashion shows, concerts, plenty of stuff. Before '94, which is like the moment which I started my company, but I was already working for 6 years before I started the company. So that was kind of a learning phase. That was the time my friends were at university. I was just doing this on my own, like somehow hoping to learn something from it, and I believe I did. '94, I launched Explorator, the restaurant guide, and it's always like nearly like periods of 10 years of getting some growth, but that was not a topic, in the 90s, in the 90s and in Luxembourg and in media. There were no business plan, there were no mentors, there were no startups, there was nothing like that, of course. So it was just one guy trying to do whatever he wants to do, and luckily Luxembourg was a very welcoming territory, because if you do something, people give you a chance. Of course, there's judgment, but there's also plenty of opportunities, and so it kept on growing in a steady manner, but. By the end of, I would say 10 years later, we might have been like 25 people or so. So it took a while. We were launching a new brand and doing different stuff. The funny thing is, from the beginning on, what was always there was always, there was always publishing, and there was always events.
Okay.
And so there was always like the community and the getting to know the people you work for. That you don't work just like for some imagined people. You already know them, I launched my first kind of professional magazine in '88 with a big event on the Place d'Armes. So we had like drummers, big format live painting, and then a few young guys doing the little magazine, So always like big announcements and bringing people talking and that stayed. And over the first 10 years, we had already like two different segments. One was lifestyle, restaurants, nightlife, and one was technology and business. So there's always the two, and we still keep on doing that today. So we keep on doing both publishing and events, and we keep on serving business, technology, community, plus the other part of the life.
But in the beginning, when you say you were publishing and so on, were you creating the content or were you more aggregating the content in the early days?
No, we were creating it. I mean,
we were creating
it
from
scratch on. It's plenty of mistakes, it's like, but it happened. Everything was original. With that was also a time with even writers were really, really unprofessional. There were not many like professional writers That was not like a profession you could easily do. So it was really great for that period. If you look at it today, it's ridiculous, you know. But it's part of a period. You know,
yeah, exactly.
That's it.
And I mean, you started small, and when was the step where you needed to eventually accelerate or increase the volume? I guess in the beginning, because when you start with creating content and you get some traction, on the one hand, the volume of distribution increases. That's one kind of headache. But the other thing, you also need to increase or adapt the content per se. How did you tackle that one?
There was nearly a plan.
Nearly?
There was nearly a plan. It was mostly out of passion, interest for topics. It was nothing. I mean, you have to keep in mind there's no investor other than myself. So I didn't need to explain to anybody why we're doing that, except the friends I was working with, or clients or audiences, which gives you a great freedom. And I think a lot of great quality comes from that, when you're really free. And there was no cash burning because there was no cash. You know, so it was really a great way of doing things, learning on the go, no financial pressure other than being able to live on it. And that kept on growing like that, like 10 people, 30 people. Okay, there's a moment where you start saying, okay, now is a bit, it's getting a bit more serious. There's a lot of payroll to pay and a lot of people depending on you. And funnily enough, we had a HR manager 10 years before we had a finance manager. You know, so it's
yeah, but yes, as you said, people is the key for your business. But coming back to the switch, when you were doing the switch, how was it difficult to convince? You were saying, okay, you had clients already, and then that's why you made the step and so on. Was it difficult to convince potential clients in the beginning, or was it, okay, it's nice, it's new, it's hype, let's try it? How? Because I can imagine it's a difficult path between getting it free so that people get interested in it, and then to make them pay in some way. How did you tackle that? I mean, in the beginning,
we mostly had a business model from 1997 to 2002. We had a very successful monthly magazine called Nightlife.lu, which was just when the internet started in Luxembourg, and it was a print magazine, but it was also online, and it was a free magazine basically. But it was the typical media business model from the 19th century: create an audience, create value, and then monetize it. So that's what we did, and we ended up, after 5 years, we had 30,000 readers, which was like by the official study, like not us imagining it, but that was like the plurimedia study. So that was like really high numbers. That was the last year I had it. Everybody was quite amazed by it, you know, because it was in numbers like a daily paper.
Yeah.
You couldn't imagine having that in France or Germany or in England, having a free monthly on clubbing, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Having numbers as the second biggest daily paper. So convincing, it's never easy at the beginning, but, it happens. You know, it happens after 6 months, after 12 months. It's quite, when there's success, people follow.
And also, you played around also with the formats. I can still remember the Nightlife was a small format which you could put into your pocket.
It was a pocket-sized format, yeah.
And then with the Nightlife, you had also the Spider Awards, or you had some techie awards.
Yeah, we had the Luxembourgish Web Awards.
That
was a moment where there was a time where you could still list the websites, the available websites. So we published even a directory on print, like those are the websites that exist. I feel very old now, you know, saying that.
It's not so.
It's not that long ago.
No, therefore.
So we had like the ceremonies with in cinemas, big ceremonies with juries and public votes on the most popular and the best websites, and people kept on fighting about it. Is it right? Is it wrong? That sort, you know, like, so it was like. It kept the community busy, and it was a great moment. And I remember, I think the last ceremony we did was at over the street here at what was then Cinema Marivaux.
Yes.
Beautiful old cinema. And our offices was just next to it. So no way to get internet there. No way. So what we did, just took a cable and we just throw it over the street. And that was the way you could do stuff at that time. So there was like over the street there was like an illegal cable for one night. And it was live broadcasted.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I mean, you had this playing with formats for the Explorator. The Paper Jam also went through different formats. Yes. Was it, would you say, a natural adaptation, or was it more saying, okay, I'm bored with that one, I'm doing something else? Or
I think it's good to change the formula of a magazine. Mm-hmm. It's good to create different formats, different formulas for different brands. So I think like when we launched Delano, it was clearly smaller than Paper Jam, and it was different. And our goal was the object, the paper, also the format, the size. That's part of the brand story. So we thought like that's one way of making it different from the other brand. So that's one part of that. This create distinctive elements of a brand. But then also when you have one brand and you keep on doing stuff, you learn from it. Paper Jam, at one moment, there were just so many pages in this small format. We said, let's make it bigger, it will help. But then we ended up having so many pages on that large format, you know. So then we added different volumes. There was a month we had over 200 pages for a month. It's just too much. People can't read it anymore, you know. But there was success, and success drives you to do always more. Is that a good thing? I don't know. But that's what's happening. We have a ratio to create comfort for our readers. 1/3 advertising, 2/3 content.
Okay.
So the more clients, kind of you're pushed to create more content. Which is not such a good thing to do, but you do it when you're young, you do it that way. Normally you should have today I believe it's better to define what's the best amount of content for your reader and then sell accordingly.
So that means there was a need for it. I mean, all the content, either print, online, and so on, which you created and went through and played with, there was a need for it at that time, more or less. There was a void, there was a gap.
There was a void, and it's really amazing how Luxembourg didn't notice that people were not speaking Luxembourgish. That people were speaking French in those days and now English. That nobody didn't care about them. That nobody nearly didn't care about the business community. Luxembourg is a place for business. Luxembourg is now, since 15 years, has a university, but at that time it was financial center. That was it. So how could traditional media not cover those topics, not seriously cover those topics? How could those media just create content in Luxembourgish, TV, radio, and German for the dailies and the weeklies? That was a good thing for us, because they were more caring about the electing community, people with the right to vote, because media companies were kind of linked to politics. We were definitely not linked to politics, we were linked to regular people, everybody. And so we said, let's choose French first. French is a language which is spoken by everyone at that time. There were much less English expats at that time. There were a number in NASA or in Cargolux, but it was not like today, not at all. And Luxembourgish people, of course, they are very fluent in French. So that was a kind of inclusive thinking, but it was the key of our success at the end.
And nobody did, during the time you were doing all this, was there nobody trying to copy you? Because the ones with the bigger pockets?
Bigger pockets, smaller pockets. Bigger pockets, if you have bigger pockets, you can try and copy. If you have no pockets, or if you're really small, you can do things really cheaper. So both sides are a competition. And what happens is that all over the years, I mean, so many brands came and were gone, and are gone now. And you even can't imagine it anymore. I mean, if you would list all the cemetery of media brands Luxembourg, it's crowded.
Yeah, there used to be.
Always like 6 months, 2 years, 3 years. At the end, Well, at the end, when there's no audience, there's no business. And the bad thing is with all this, I mean, competition is always good. It drives us, of course, it drives us. The bad thing is if the competition is too cheap, like not respecting any journalistic ethics, it means that people for money get coverage. And that standard, which is like a really bad standard, of course, for journalism and for press, clients think that's normal because they get that somewhere else, and then you have to fight against that. So the competition might not be on the budget side, but it's on the understanding side of what you are doing, and what you're doing is not communication for companies. You are doing journalism.
Serious journalism.
Journalism.
Yeah. But the other thing is, if I understand well, is you grew by yourself. I mean, you grew internally, organically. You didn't go on a buying spree also, I mean, buying eventually other houses or other titles. You all did it organically, whereas if you look a little bit outside of Luxembourg, there it's more the other way around. I mean, there are not many who grow organically, but they grow in order by buying other titles. Is that something you would say is specific for the Luxembourgish market ecosystem, or would you say if you had eventually the pockets, or I don't know, the opportunity to buy some titles, you would have done it? It's a hypothetical question.
I was never into that thinking because as a creator, as an entrepreneur, and as somebody who does stuff, I was always calculating what does it take to do it and what does it take to buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
And buying was the expensive option.
Of course, it's always expensive.
Yes, but not that much faster.
Yeah.
Because you also buy a culture, and our culture was really fast. And so maybe you would win 6 months, but you can do it. So we did a lot of stuff on our own. We stopped some brands over the 25 years. But we never, there was of course plenty of opportunities on the market. In the media landscape there are larger companies they prefer to buy. They did a lot, there was a lot of buying happening in the 90s. 80s was just crazy amount of money. I just missed that out of age, you know, my age. So some companies had a lot of money in the 90s. Then there were the radio liberalization, new radios was launched. There was so much money on the market, so some companies kept on buying. The thing is, when you look at it now, most of that what they bought doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. Yeah, you know, so it's not necessarily a sign of success. And some brands were really like when you buy a local media brand like Luxembourg, you don't buy much. Yeah. And you don't buy a media brand which you can grow out of Luxembourg because the brand hasn't proven anything. So why would you spend, I mean, that's like for tech people, that sounds like super small amounts, but why would you spend 1 million on a media brand?
Oh, it's still an interesting amount, let's call it like that.
Yes, and some guys sold for that price. And it's really crazy because that brand was worth, in my eyes, 15,000 euro. And it was there for 2 years maybe. They were losing money on it for 2 years. Yeah. So why would you do it, you know? So I always thought, like, let's do it internally with your team. You have your standards of quality, way of doing. There were so many ideas to do stuff within the team. So we were just able to produce our own ideas, basically. And you could grow faster. And when I speak with friends in tech, in Luxembourg or elsewhere, of course we sound like a very traditional company, slow growing, but at the end, 25 years later we are there. We make reasonable profit. We have a good growth rate. Now it's like in the media sector, who's like we have a good growth, good profit. I hope the quality is still going up. You know, so I think it's you could call it today a sustainable model. You know, it's maybe not rocketing, but then it's still there. You know, and you can build on it.
And the other thing is with the brands. You were talking about brands and so on. How do you manage the different brands so that you do not cannibalize yourself? Because I can imagine that some of your brands were nearly cannibalizing each other or not. How did you tackle that one, or who assisted you in tackling these issues?
Yes, one have to be very careful with that. Overlapping is fine, if it's a bit, but you can be your own competitor if there is so much competition that you want to just kill somebody else. We never did that. So we have overlapping because like Delano, Paper Jam, of course, some people read French and English, okay, so they can read both. We have some people we have many readers which are quite frequent flyers, so okay, there might be Phytoscope and Paper Jam or Delano, but mostly those brands do different stuff. The tone of voice is different, the editorial approach is different, sometimes the periodicity is different. So mostly it's just kind of overlapping, but you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. So today we think that we mastered it quite well. Sometimes there's more overlapping for clients. Our advertisers say, oh, this is like, you do really a lot of publishing and a lot of publishing days and so, yes, but that's quite different, you know. The targets are quite different, so exactly. It works, but for the clients it starts to be a lot.
But on the other hand, I mean, you have the different brands and then the different formats. You have the content you have created. What do you do with the content? Do you also recycle it from one brand to the other eventually, or are there walled gardens for you?
No, we don't recycle. We have sometimes a feature which is like
similar.
I mean, news are happening, so
yeah, exactly.
Of course you have, but that are different people writing, and they do it on their own way. But we have sometimes Paper Jam publishing a Delano piece saying, our colleagues from Delano wrote this. As it's more like a cross-brand promotion, but it's not. The content has to be original. They have different editorial approaches. They have different ways of handling stuff, and that's right. Because there's also next to the French and the English and English speaking and French speaking, you have also Luxembourgish people, and they speak all those languages, and they might read some of the brands, so they should feel that they are in a different brand when they switch to brand.
And coming back to the brands, you were also talking about events. That events were an interesting part of the development. Did you, in the beginning, you said, if I understood well, was creating events in order to sell the content or the publications? How is it now? How would you say is the ratio? Is it symbiotic, they go in parallel, or is it more one which is feeding the other? Or
I think in the beginning it was really important to have it to understand the needs of the people. Not so much to sell it, but to understand what people, I mean, once you talk to your clients, you understand them. So what better do events that you can talk one-to-one? Not everyone, but you can talk one-to-one. I had a great experience out of it. Nowadays, we believe in it's a system which it's not like one feeding the other. They feed all directions. It's not even A and B. It's multi-directional. The newsletters, that topic newsletter, that printed annual, that monthly annual, the trainings, the conferences, the tastings, the traveling. Everything reinforces the other one.
And when came the idea for the club?
At a weird moment.
Yeah?
At a super weird moment, because that was spring 2008, and I met with my partners, and I said, well, we have to do this. There's a new thing, we have to do it. We did a lot of events before, and most of them were like on guest list based, and we had great success, but we ended up having like cocktails with 1,200 people, and a lot of invoices. And I mean, everything was produced very reasonable with a lot of partners, and it was like we felt like it's just too much. And I remember I got one of those. I got a call like from one of the community, like a friend, and say, "Oh, it's really great, your cocktail. It's a really great day because it's my birthday." I said, "Well, good, come and you will have some free champagne." And, "Oh, can I bring 40 people?" Not can I bring +1, +2. Can I bring 40 people? So like, maybe now it's the time to make an evolution of the formula. You know? And we said like, okay, we are very open-minded, and it's like friends of friends are always welcome, and it's great, and that it's our readers, and that's fantastic. But it somehow it ended up being a little bit too much, and I said let's turn it around, and so I introduced the concept to my partners, and I had at that time 2 partners, and one said, "I don't like that idea." He left the partnership since then. Okay. And the other one said, "I really like the idea. Let's try it." And so, in order to convince them, I mean, not only my partners, but also the staff, I said, like, "Well, let me just define it, and let me get the 2 first members. The first one might be, you might be lucky, you get 1. But if you get 2, and it's big ones, it makes already like a number of people employed by those kind of companies, and because a club without members, it's super weird. And when you start a club, well, you need a crowd, you know. So I did the first 2 meetings. One was the bill. I went there, they signed right away, and the second one was PwC. I went there myself, and they signed right away. So that's a great concept.
Wow.
And so they were having 2,000 employees, so we had 4,000 potential members.
Yeah.
So my partners were convinced by then. Say, okay, let's grow it. So the 50 first companies was of course difficult, because we had to re-educate companies, saying, okay, we know the last 10 years, all the drinks were for free.
Free beer.
That's over now. When you come, no money out of your pocket. But you get invoiced once a year, not for the drinks, but for the value of the community, for all the services we provide. And so, of course, when you launch a club, the first 100 members, for us members, it's companies, not people. So the first 100 companies becoming a member, you always have to say, who's a member? Oh, they're a member, they're a member, they're a member, so people trust you. Then there's a tipping point. I don't know when a tipping point is, but there's a tipping point, and people say, who's not a member? Who's missing? If you have 500 companies, somehow, who's not a member is the real question, you know? So, but the first 100, the question is, who is a member? Is it good enough that I'm joining, you know? And then there's this moment, and now we have 1,200 or 1,250 companies which are members. So the question really is, who is not a member? You know, how do you dare not being a member? It's like losing your time and your opportunities in the market, you know. So, but there are those milestones in the life of a club. So of course you have to adapt, language-wise, topic-wise, format-wise, mornings, daytimes, lunchtimes, early evenings, weekends. You have to do plenty of stuff to try and please all the different kind of people you serve at the end.
But in the very beginning, were you already focused on recurring revenue? I mean, when you started in the photocopy shop, was it already recurring revenue you had, or were focusing, or did that come over time? Because now it's recurring revenue. Yes. I mean, if you have a membership, subscriptions, and so on. But if you have a free magazine, a little bit like Nightlife and so on, there it's more, okay, you need to sell the advertisers.
And recurring revenues is the thing everybody wants, and it's a normal thing today where people create companies to sell them. But if you are an entrepreneur and you create your own company, you might not think about the market value of the company. You might just think about whatever you want to do. I mean, I'm talking about the very early days. No. The recurrence of revenue, that was even not a word that we knew. None of the young guys working, we were just like, of course we were trying to sell, of course we were trying to get clients to sell, to buy each issue, to buy like advertising for the whole year. So you get extra price for it. Of course we were doing that in order to be sure to get some revenue in the future. But that was not the business model. It was just like
Trying
surviving.
to cover
You
the
were
cost.
surviving
Yeah,
issue by
yeah.
issue, and there was. It sounds irresponsible today, but there was not the budget.
Yeah.
You know, that was the 90s. It's really, and it's of course you had all the corporations and everybody was very professional. But then within young companies, that was not a normal thing. I think today, a startup, they're hyper professional. They are so hyper professional. You know, you can't imagine. They're 23 and they're just brilliant. They do everything right. They have the idea. They know they have to work hard. They do all this stuff on. They follow mentors. They do the business plan. They reinvent themselves every 3 weeks. It's fantastic. I imagine if with that knowledge of today, back then, you know.
That would be amazing.
It's
It would be
amazing,
having a
you know?
rocket.
But maybe it's also it's a different. I think when you create today a startup, you don't. It's not your. It's not like a lifetime project. It's a project for 3 to 7 years.
And then you do something else.
And then you kind of find your exit and you do something else, which is a good way of doing. But that was never my motivation. I always think of creating like a long-term thing, having an influence, also in adding value to the place where you are. So giving something to the community, giving something to the society. And Luxembourg was at that time a much more traditional place also.
Oh yes.
So being an independent challenger, that really means something. If you're in media, you can influence, and it's really great.
But you had the opportunity to reinvent yourself in the
Plenty of
same
time, of course.
projects. Yeah, therefore that's why. But also one of the issues which companies very often struggle with is, okay, you create yourself, you set up, it goes well, you have invoices, they get paid, some of them don't get paid, you need more and more staff and so on. Was the staff issue, because you were saying that you have these people in your company because that they are key for the company, they have the mentality, you have the culture and so on. How do you make sure that it's still there? Because very often companies, when they evolve, either if they go bigger or I don't know what, the culture not always follows. Was it luck, or did you do something on purpose?
I think you need a project, you need a vision, you need a challenge, and if there are challenges and you announce them to the staff, well, they know where to go. And you lose some people with that. At Maison Moderne, we are known for having a culture of hard working. So some don't want to join, some don't want to come back. But mostly for those who spend at least 2 or 3 years, it's a big moment in their career. I remember a journalist we lost to the profession because he just quit being a journalist and just did some commercial writing. And then somehow he went back to another media outlet, and I called him, oh, what's happening? Oh, finally I don't want to do this commercial stuff, I prefer to be a journalist. Well, come back, you know, I mean, we really like your work. And said, oh no, thank you, but I work much less now. And well, then please don't come back, you know, then don't come back, because we will not change, we have to work. We are always we are the challenger, and we as a challenger, we are 120 people now, but we are still a challenger. And people who join Maison Moderne, they want to join a challenger, and that the project of changing something, of a purpose, that drives people.
But I mean, you have the passion, you have the vision, but let's say in the far future, how would you like to give the legacy, that your legacy goes further? Have you already thought about that, or is that something which is not on your mind for the time being?
Well, it's on my mind because in 2013 I decided to set up a real board for Maison Moderne, which you didn't have before, like many small
You don't
companies. They have like a board which is like mostly signing papers once a year, but now we have a very active board since early 14. And one of the things coming up on board meetings is risk management, of course. So the risk management for like an entrepreneur, I mean for a founder-based company, is always what happens if you get crushed by a bus, or that's also the thing coming again and again, and there, to be honest, there was not really an answer to it. So of course we had no investors, so investors might have been raising the question earlier, but at least the board did and said, like, okay, like imagine like you are 6 months in hospital for being crushed by a bus. Is the company ready for it? And so we worked on that basically. It's like saying, okay, let's imagine that scenario. And we brought in more people on
the management
level. And I pushed it as far as announcing a bit 2.5 years ago that I even will give up my position as CEO. So that's part of the story. So that's part of saying let's create a totally new leadership of the company. So we imagine as a really Luxembourgish company, when we are going to start recruiting, that's going to spread like fire. So we sort of like, let's announce it before we do it. So we kill all the misinformation, and so we announced it one day to the staff, and the next day to the clients, and the third day to everybody. And people were sure that we had the candidate, and we will announce it a week later. But we just started that same day recruiting, so the headhunter was quite happy because it made his life much easier, because it was public wisdom. And it also crossed borders, the information, of course, because colleagues in France and Belgium observe us, because you have a kind of a atypical business model. And luckily enough, those information was spread to Paris and Brussels. And our headhunter had, of course, a mission to headhunt Luxembourg, but also French-speaking European candidates. And so we ended up meeting Richard Carassian, who took over as the CEO over 2 years ago now, and who was really sharing values, passion, being a hard worker. We met, headhunter met him a few times. We met the first time, we spent 3 hours talking with the board. And like that's immediate, that it works immediately, So that's good luck, You need some luck sometimes, and so there is a difference, but there is not that much of a difference.
Exactly.
Of course, there is a very big difference. We are very different persons, and he has a very different leadership. He has a background. He studied law, but then he worked in HR and in digital transformation and in acquisition. So he has like a quite diversified career in media all over Europe, Germany, France, Belgium. So there are common values which are really important to us, and which are not marketing values, which are human values. But he's totally different. And when he had his first speech to the staff, everybody thought, this is a funny guy, he's really great. He's very charismatic and he's quite funny, and I'm working, so it's not that much fun all the day, I'm just like pushing, working. But Richard is not that different, but of course he has a big talent in showing also a different side of himself, and people learned quite fast that there is going to be a change, but the change is not going to be as drastic as they thought, because at the end you need hard work to achieve anything, and I think any good leader knows that, and that's what has to be applied, even if you have maybe more fun in between, but at the end it's still happening. So one part of the legacy thing happened by leaving operations. So Richard had a few months to quit his job at Libération in Paris, move over to Luxembourg, get some insights of the company, like with a few workshops, like heavy workshops on all the data, everything, and then starting the job in the company, which since its inception 23 or so years before, never had a culture of changing the leader. So our culture was terrible for leadership change. It was never meant to be. We never thought about it. Other companies change every 3 years, so we repaint walls and that's it. But here it was fundamental change. People accepted it quite well. Some left. Some was asked to leave. Richard brought in a number of new talents, like top positions. Some from Paris. So there was a big change in leadership at Maison Moderne. So somehow I managed to do it without needed to die first, or
exactly.
So it's great. You can observe your company. I'm now chairman of the company, so I have a really nice position in still not handling day-to-day problems. Being heavily involved in the strategy, in the vision, in networking, and in all the stuff I like to do, and I think I'm good at it. But there's also some fresh air. There's some fresh air for the staff. There's fresh air for our readers. There's fresh air for our clients, and I think that really strengthens the company. So I think that's a big part of it. And after those few days of workshopping with Richard and the board, before he arrived, he announced very clearly, there's a last topic I would like to address.
You out.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Before he signed the contract. I said, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be on distance. And then once we had those workshops, and they said, oh, there's another last topic now that I'm arriving. I want to be sure that you left the building before I arrive, like physically. I don't want you to be in the company anymore, because I can't handle the situation with the founder having office two doors next to mine. And I said, yes, that's a bit surprising for me, because I thought we would do maybe 6 months, I would be in meetings with him and then giving some background before and after, or that was my way of thinking. I never did it before, so that was my way of thinking about it. I said, no, I don't want to have it like that. I want to have it like a cold shower, first day. I said, well, fine for me. So I got myself an office somewhere else. And
nice one.
I left a nice one. So I left the company on Friday, and he arrived on Monday. And it was the best that could happen in the company, I think. It certainly was difficult for him, because of course Maison Moderne is somehow, it's 4 companies within one, because there are 4 very distinctive business lines. So it's a lot of things to know, a lot of partnerships going on. Many people you meet are going to say, oh, Mike did that so well, and that will be difficult for you. And that's something totally, it's lovely. It's meant lovely, but it's totally unnice to say, because of course I tried to hire somebody who was better than me.
Of course.
Otherwise I would have been a really bad entrepreneur. And I think he has really great talent, and it comes with being ready to work a lot, combine both, and I think it's a success.
But now you are doing Lemonland. What is Lemonland, by the way?
Well, Lemonland Media Lab is a new company I launched where I expected to spend much more time on it, but doing research on media and publishing on the topic of media, creating international conferences on media. But then I got started on that, and somehow plenty of stuff I researched and I shared with my partners at Maison Moderne. We got kind of, how could I say, we somehow involved in all those things, saying, oh, let's do some new stuff for Maison Moderne in the meanwhile, So I kind of got absorbed by Maison Moderne being the main client of Lemonland Media Lab.
There's worse.
So we decided for the 21st anniversary of Maison Moderne, which is this year, not spending another crazy amount of money on a big party and on books on our anniversary, because we did that a few years before on 20th of Maison Moderne. Instead, investing that money in doing some research for the the future of the company and the future of media. And that was a good thing to do. So I spent most of my last year in focus groups on the future of media in general, but also in Luxembourg, of course. New formats members would like to experience, new formats readers would like to read, new channels advertisers would like to advertise on, what are the value people care most. So we did a lot of focus groups, we did online surveys, we did workshops with the team, we did a lot of benchmarking, international benchmarking. I had I think 18 or 19 topics I worked on, and at the end there came out a white paper which I introduced to the board, and which is the basis of our pluriannual strategy for the future.
Oh, great.
So at the end, I did what I wanted to do for so many years, but you cannot do it if you handle the operations. It's just impossible to do. So at the end, I was really lucky having Richard in his function of a CEO, himself having created a number of new functions in the company, so he has his own strong team around him. And at the end, Maison Moderne could invest time in thinking about the future, because the future is really fast now. I mean, I don't need to tell it to the tech people, but it's really fast, and changes are happening on international level, and you cannot keep the scope in a local market. It's just really, really, really hard.
But speaking from the local market, has there not been a time where you thought, okay, we are now on the local market, we reached certain growth, a certain maturity and so on, why not going a little bit abroad? Because you are interested in abroad, what's happening there, and to get inspiration, but not going, spreading your wings abroad. Was that not an option?
We did it several times. Before you asked the question about the Paper Jam Club, when it was launched, and I told you the story about the first member raising, but what I didn't say at that time was it was also April 2008, which means that's a number of months before September 2008, which means Lehman Brothers, and which means nobody spending money on human resources and recruiting, and that was kind of part of the promise we had. So in that same time, when we launched a job board and a business club, when every company was saying cut the costs, and so it was quite harsh to start with. At that same period, we had those projects to go abroad, to open offices in Switzerland with Paper Jam and Belgium. And we had, at that time, we had some business plans, of course. We learned from since then. And we were looking on the real estate market to find offices. So it was really in our mind, offices, recruitment, let's get it done. And on a meeting with partners, I noticed that the closer we came to the deadline, the whiter they became. They were really pale. They turned into pale, into zombies, or I don't know what. Because, of course, at that time, it would have been too early for the kind of company we have been. They kind of noticed it, but out of friendship, respect, I don't know why, they kind of were not comfortable by telling me. But I understood, of course, they turned into total pale figures, and we had this open discussion about listen, I need a 100% commitment. And they said, listen, it's fine, if everything is growing, it's fine, but we are not ready for the first problem we get in one of the three markets. We might have a very big problem. And that was the discussion, was also 2008. So luckily, we didn't do it, because we might not have achieved it. Today I think we wouldn't have. But also, if you are in a foreign market and then there's a crisis, you're the first one who is killed.
Exactly.
In Luxembourg, we survived all those years. 2008 was fine, it was last month, but 2009 was very heavy for the media. I mean, for everybody, but for the media, was spending advertising costs is super easy. It takes you to decide, it takes you 2 seconds. What's happening is that people cut budgets from number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, down to whatever. They don't cut number 1 and 2. Number 1 they don't cut. So that was our chance. So instead of losing in 2009, 10, 11, we said like, okay, we didn't do Belgium and Switzerland. I respect your decision, your gut feeling, because it was gut feeling, but there's a deal. No Switzerland, no Belgium, but fast forward Luxembourg. And that was the best decision, I think, ever, because in 2008 we were maybe, I don't know exactly, like 40 people. And in the years of crisis, where everybody was just there were social plans in the media sector, there were many jobs was lost in different companies. And we were just launching the Paper Jam Business Club, the Paper Jam Job Board, Delano, Archiduc. We were just launching new titles. We were doing new stuff, newsletters,
weekly. You were covering
weekly.
The market, I still imagine.
It is cheaper to grow when there's a crisis.
Exactly. Yeah.
There is no competition, people are afraid. If you do something, people are happy, because somebody does something, you know. And of course it's risky, and if you have to prove it by a business plan, for Delano, Archiduc, there was no business plan. For the Paper Jam Club, there was no business. I mean, a business plan on a little paper, like
on a napkin,
but not that was not a business plan. So it was mostly being really passionate about it, pushing it really hard, and just doing it, getting it right. When the market recovers, then it's really interesting.
Okay, yeah, because you have to keep the position you have reached.
Yeah, then you have it, and then you can keep it. So that was that was the first time we really wanted to go out of Luxembourg. Before, or in a different way, we did it with our magazine called Nico, which went international, but which is like sold in museums and concept stores. So yeah, it has 30 countries, but that was super small revenue. It was selling a few thousand copies around the world, so it's nice if you travel and you go to a museum in New York and your magazine is there. You feel good, you do a picture, you post it, and it's nice, you know. But that's not business, that's an experience, that's like international networking, and you grow your network, and that's really great. And then a number of years later, linked also to my decision to step back from the operational point, was also to think about the international markets. And so we restarted the thing, of course, and we relaunched these ideas, and it took us some while. I mean, it takes, if you change a CEO coming from out of Luxembourg, it takes you some time to introduce the person, and there is a transition phases. It takes time. But in the meanwhile, we also worked on those international issue of Paper Jam, and we thought a lot about what would be the best markets for it. So of course, being from Luxembourg, one could think that might be Belgium, because Belgium is next door. The advertising market is already like Benelux, so brands know Paper Jam, and we have a lot of clients. But then we thought Belgium is a great market, but Belgium is also a market which is like, it's super crowded, and there's not a lot of money. So we again went back to other European markets like Germany, which is of course more complicated because we write in French and English and not German, but what does it matter? You recruit people for local people, so it doesn't matter at the end. And so we did some analysis on market studies on different regions in Germany. We thought, when we look at Paper Jam, what we're really good at is like local or regional communities. Okay, Luxembourg is national, but it's like a region. Luxembourg is like a region. So we thought, let's not go and take over France or Germany. We might not be able to do that because there might be plenty of companies doing that already. So why not go to regions and go to Bordeaux and go to Marseille and go to Hamburg and go to München and cover those areas which are not covered in the right manner on national media in their own countries. So we did some research on that, and of course I don't think there's any market which is like it's crowded all over, but it's not in the same style. So most business titles we found in those areas, they were really like quite how could I say, like more traditional business without fun. And we always combined business with fun. That was, I mean, why call yourself Paper Jam? You know, that's already like when we started in 2000, it was always like a kind of a statement in being less serious or less by being very serious, of course, but you know. So we thought like we could do it, and we did those market researches, and we thought like maybe Germany would be a better market than France to start with, because that's, well, it's the biggest European market, so why not start in the biggest one, you know? And well, our way of doing it was of course using our Luxembourgish ecosystem and doing a copy of it, adapting slightly, and multiplying the cities. But working on that, we noticed that our master file still needs some work.
So there's something to come.
So
Eventually.
the thing is, when we went back to the master file, we noticed that not only the master file has more to work on, but also the market. And we found, again, plenty of ideas on how to improve our brands, our channels, our ways of presenting information, monetizing communities. We are so inspired now by our local market that it keeps us really busy. And we have plans for the next 5 years which are really amazing. And we think, okay, what should we do? You know, so we are kind of back to Luxembourg, saying, okay, let's do that again. Like, let's do another 1 or 2 or 3 rounds, because it's getting much stronger and it will even be better. So now the big question, of course, is: do we ever gonna achieve it? Are we gonna be happy with a master file one day, which we wanna do a copy? Or is this going like eternally and then at the end being frustrated in not getting out of the country? I don't know. For the moment, our ambitions are very high, both in terms of quality but also in terms of financial growth, and which is a heavy thing to achieve, especially given the international context of media being in a situation where they lose money to duopoly of Facebook and Google, of people, people going from print, high revenue for publishers, not only to digital, but to mobile, but to social, with decreasing value for publishers. So it's like, if you put it on the paper, you would think you have to leave that industry. But I believe many companies will die, of course. That is a terrible moment of publishers closing companies. It's, it started with printers closing, now it's publishers closing. But at the end, for every 10 companies who go bankrupt, there's more market for others.
Exactly.
So we believe in growth, not only for media and journalism, but also for print, of course for digital and for social and for clubs and for events but also for print. And we believe that we can play a very different role in Luxembourg in the next 20 years. We believe that Paper Jam can have much more readers in the future, even though we have already now over 80,000 readers every month with Paper Jam, which is like, if you compare it to other countries, people don't believe you. The good thing is in Luxembourg, the media study is paid by our competition. So it must be true somehow, because it's not us paying it, you know. And so the difference now between mainstream TV and Paper Jam is just 6 points.
Wow.
Imagine having that in France or Germany, having a monthly business magazine being 6 point difference to TF1. Impossible. So today the second largest daily paper, paid daily paper, Tageblatt, has 7-point audiences. We have over 11 with Paper Jam. So already like much more than the second largest daily paper, you know. So if you put that in a context, Paper Jam is not behaving like a regular business media brand. So we think, as the readers show us that they give us much more success than the category would allow us, we think we should give something back. So we launched Paper Jam Foodzilla, so a news item on drinking, eating, going out in Luxembourg with a specific young tone of voice. We believe that there is much more audience for us to get in the category of 25 to 34, 25 to 34, yes. We believe now nearly 1 out of 2 readers are women, which is not normal for business title.
Okay, yeah.
But we believe we can have so much more women reading us.
That's much.
So there's much we can get. Those coming from the universities, we can get many more women. We can get many more Luxembourgish people.
Mm-hmm.
We still have people from Luxembourg, Luxembourgish people who are working in public service, and they don't read us. They think it's just for private. It's for business, you know. But we also cover culture. We cover justice. We cover politics, and of course some topics of business are interest of everybody.
Mm.
So we believe the growth we can have in Luxembourg is really tremendous, and we will see in a number of years. 5 years already, it will be very big, but we believe for the next 20 years, so much stuff to do that I hope I will not be kept busy with that, and that we will manage somehow to test our concept out of Luxembourg.
Okay, great, thank you. On this positive note, aren't there maybe one or the other question to Mike? No? Yes?
Well, once you have a business model which is unparalleled, and it is the numbers we provide and what we do, it doesn't happen in Europe. It's strange. Maybe it's Luxembourg, I don't know. So once you have achieved that, companies watch you, and somehow it's like if you look at the statistics, it's quite depressive for media. But we are not driven by statistics, we are driven by our own achievements. So we are totally out of achievements. We are like in a category like the best Scandinavian media companies. They are in those categories of profit and quality. We are within those categories. So far away from Luxembourg standards, far away from Belgium, France, German, not thinking about Italy or Spain. So of course people observe you, you get in touch, but we are really good at what we do because we are independent. And we can take decisions really fast, and that's part of the company. So it's really weird if you imagine being in the bureaucratic system of a worldwide company and following that. Maybe it would destroy it, you know. So maybe the right thing for us to do is remain independent. And if you would have a partner, it would need to be a partner of that same culture, you know. And we are a small amount of partners. Everybody is involved in the company or operational level, plus me as a founder, and that creates a very special dynamic. It's a group of entrepreneurs doing stuff, and when we take decisions, we risk our own money, and we love to take risks, and that's but we don't want to lose time on reporting every 2 weeks to headquarters in Antwerp or in Hamburg or I don't know where, and we have to trust your guts also, and I think the culture that comes with being independent is very, very strong, and you take the right decisions for the long term. So you have discussions with people discuss, people connect and say, oh, that's great what you do, yes, it's great what we do because we do it our way. So that's the way we are, and we want to remain, you know.
Yes, please, here.
Good question. Maybe I missed it when you explained it the first time. When you talked about risk mitigation, why was the plan to but transition you out as the solution that was discussed during the...
Because as a founder, I was involved in nearly everything. I really love journalism. Oops, sorry, this is me. I really love journalism, I love design, I love events, and I mean details of production in events. Lighting, I love stage, I love everything I can. I really love to get involved in everything. I love the commercial side, I love the communication side, so I was involved in anything in the company. Maybe even finance, but maybe the least, somehow. Having an eye on it was enough, but the other thing I was really into it with high passion. So if everything comes to one person in a company, that's a bit dangerous. So I was even giving input on the atmosphere of a night, like this conference we want to have, this lighting, those drinks. Like I mean, not doing everything on my own. I always like to have a great team, and you need plenty of great people who work over hours, who don't count hours, and who are hard workers to achieve it. But there was always a dialogue, and I got involved myself in nearly everything. So at the end, people come up asking, "Oh, do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this?" So you end up with a situation which is like kind of insane. It's very hard on yourself because you work a lot, but you know it's what you want to do. So we thought like it would be impossible to replace that person in case of an accident. So when Richard arrived, he has many talents, but he also said, I wanna do it in a different way. I wanna hire more people on C-level, and I want delegate stronger, which is of course the best thing to do. But as a founder, it's growing slowly. You don't have time to think. You don't notice it when it's the point where it's too much into details. And I really believe in details because details make the difference. If it's only Excel and only those kind of discussions, I think the quality is gone. Details is everything.
Okay. Yes, and the last one.
I have a question about the question of independence, because you said you are independent, you are almost like a self-made man. But how do you compare with? I'm thinking about a French media like Mediapart, who also claims to be independent because the readers owns them because they pay membership. So how do you compare this kind of independence?
Yes. Mediapart is a different category of independence. They have they have basically two categories to consider: the staff and the readers. Well, we have a bit more. Our independence mainly is from political parties, from unions, from the church, from investors who could have a hidden agenda. So in Luxembourg, when I launched Maison Moderne in '94, media companies were owned by the church, a union. So that's what I mean by independent. Our difference to Mediapart is we get financed by members, we get financed by advertisers, but we have so many clients that not one has an influence on us. And for me, I don't have a problem by being financed by advertising, partly, as long as we have 1,500 or 1,800 clients. If we would have 3 clients, then I would be worried. But now it's happening all. It's a kind of it's part of the media education. As a company owner, you get called. Oh, we have some come to lunch. So there comes the problem of a report somebody might not appreciate. And I'm happy they discuss with me and not with my journalists, because they should work. They should do their work on their own without worrying about those kind of topics. But when they get addressed, my standard reply is always, well, if you wouldn't do that, if you did something wrong, we report it, but you did something wrong first. And that's the big thing. Then we report on it, and that's the reason why we have readers. If you would have no readers, you would not advertise. So now, if you kind of try to influence us on saying, I will take out my investments, maybe you will use your money. But if you will not write what we want, we will lose our readers and then lose your investments. So I prefer to keep the loyal readers over long term, get into some little fights with some companies from time to time, explaining why we have to do it. It normally takes not more than 3 months, and you're friends again. But it's something you have to handle with a lot of care, because you have not only to have that principle, but also to explain it. And if we did a mistake, if a journalist did a mistake, which can happen, we have to report immediately on it, saying, mea culpa, we got that story wrong, and that's how it should be. But we cannot be, we are really independent on what we write. We don't take orders. That's really important.
Last one? Last question?
Sure. Yeah, which kind of advice can you give to entrepreneurs in terms of media exposure, things to do or don't do?
Well, we even published a list on that because we noticed that so many even larger companies had trouble with it. So in French you have, well, it's also in English, you have the term media relations. And relations means not short term. I think that's the main lesson. Build up a relation with a media company by providing information which is newsworthy. So if ever you do a little thing, don't call 15 times, because it's a little thing. And if it's a milestone in your size of company, maybe start by informing, preparing documentation, giving context, European context, providing some elements that will help a journalist to understand why this might be very relevant. And of course, as an entrepreneur, you are super passionate about what you do and you believe that your idea is the best of the world and the product is so good, and bring some from that over, but not too much, because a journalist gets a lot of information every day, and one part of their work, which is the invisible part, is to select. And nobody sees the unselected work, but a lot of work is, we cannot talk about that, because we can talk about 20 things today, not 50. And so build up a relation, be honest, be kind, prepare documentation, send it, know when it's not worth talking about it, be reasonable at that time. Don't push too hard, don't give orders to journalists, they hate that, and they don't need to get them, and they will not accept it.
Okay, thank you very much.